What if the 1892 Mercy Brown vampire was real? If you are new to this channel, subscribe for a new story every night at 8 p.m. Mountain Time. Let's get into tonight's case. On March 17, 1892, a group of men gathered at the Chestnut Hill Cemetery in Exeter, Rhode Island. They were led by a local doctor named Harold Metcalf, a graduate of Bellevue Hospital Medical College in New York. The men carried shovels. They had come to dig up a body. The body was Mercy Lena Brown, 19, dead less than 2 months of tuberculosis. Her mother, Mary Eliza, had died of the same disease in 1883. Her brother Edwin, 11, was dying of it now. The family lived on a small farm on the western edge of Exeter. The father, George Brown, had buried his wife, his daughter, and was watching his son fade. Dr. Metcalf opened the casket in front of the assembled townspeople. The internal organs came out. The heart was taken, the liver, the lungs. They were placed on the family hearth that evening. The heart was burned. The ashes were mixed with water. The mixture was given to Edwin Brown to drink. The recommendation came from a licensed physician, not folklore. The cure was the ash water, and the date was 1892. The Browns lived in the western part of Exeter, in the township of Chestnut Hill. George Brown worked the farm alone after his wife died in 1883. Mercy was his eldest. She had been healthy until the autumn of 1891, when she began to cough. The pattern of deaths in the family was the pattern New England had been seeing for 40 years. Tuberculosis was called consumption then. The disease was epidemic. New England had the highest per capita rate of consumption in the United States, and Rhode Island had death rates more than double the national average. When a family member died of consumption, the body was sometimes exhumed months or years later. The folk belief held that the first victim would return to feed on the next. The cure was to remove the heart of the first victim, burn it, and give the ashes to the second as a medicine. Mercy Brown's case was not unique in 1892. There had been similar exhumations across Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Vermont, and Maine. There would be more. But Mercy Brown's case was the most thoroughly documented. It survives across the Rhode Island Historical Society, the Providence Journal archives, the parish registers of Chestnut Hill, and the report Dr. Metcalf filed with the Exeter Board of Health that spring. Dr. Harold Metcalf had been a practicing physician in Exeter since the 1870s. A member of the Rhode Island Medical Society, he was, by all accounts, a careful man. Metcalf came out to the Brown farm in early March. Edwin was dying. The family was desperate. The community had begun to whisper about Mercy, who had died less than 2 months before. The whisper was the old New England whisper. It said the first dead was feeding on the second. Metcalf examined Edwin. He reviewed Mercy's death records. He checked the parish burial register. On March 10, 1892, he concluded that an exhumation of Mercy's body was medically indicated. He wrote to the Exeter Board of Health requesting permission. The board said yes on March 15th. The exhumation took place on March 17th. Metcalf opened the body, removed the organs, and examined each one. In his report to the board, he wrote that the liver and lungs showed evidence of the disease. He wrote that the heart appeared to contain a quantity of dark, clotted blood. That last sentence has been quoted across newspapers, books, and documentaries for more than 100 years. The doctor said the heart was full of blood. The doctor said the body was fresh. The doctor wrote a careful, technical report. The newspapers wrote a legend. The exhumation took place 2 months after the burial. The ground had been frozen for most of that time. The body was remarkably well preserved, and that was the second part of the legend. Folklore said a vampire would not decompose. Folklore said the heart would be full of blood. Both conditions were observed. Both are now understood by modern forensic pathology. The preservation is explained by the temperature. The burial was in January. The body was placed in a wooden casket in frozen ground. Bacterial decomposition slows dramatically when the ground is below freezing, as it was across Rhode Island that January and February. A body buried in those conditions and exhumed in March would often appear remarkably fresh. The heart full of blood is explained by the disease itself. Pulmonary tuberculosis damages the lungs. Damaged lungs cause blood to back up across the pulmonary circulation, and that blood backs up into the heart. A person who had died of pulmonary tuberculosis would, in fact, often have a heart engorged with dark, deoxygenated, clotted blood. The doctor saw what the disease had done. The doctor wrote his report. The newspapers wrote the legend. The heart was burned on the family hearth that evening. The ashes were mixed with water in a small cup. The cup was given to Edwin. Edwin drank. Edwin died on May 25, 1892. He was 11 years old. The case became national news within a week. The Providence Journal ran the story on March 19th. The Boston Globe picked it up 2 days later. The New York Times ran a piece on March 24th. The story ran in Philadelphia, in Chicago, in St. Louis, in San Francisco. The case was the perfect newspaper story of the 1890s. A small New England town, a respectable physician, an ancient folk belief. A young woman exhumed, her heart burned on a family hearth. A young boy drinking the ashes of his sister as a cure. The story had everything the press wanted. It was not, however, unique. The 1890s saw at least a dozen documented cases of consumption-related exhumations across New England. Nellie Vaughan in Pawtucket in 1889. The Ray family in Exeter in 1892. The Tillinghast family in Exeter, again in 1893. All similar. All rooted in the same belief. All following the same procedure. The folk belief was widely held. It predated germ theory, antibiotics, and the public health movement. The belief was that the first family member to die of consumption would return to feed on the next. The only cure was to remove the first heart, burn it, and give the ashes to the second. Mercy Brown's case is the most thoroughly documented. It survives across the medical literature, the local press, the parish registers, and the state archives. It is the textbook example medical anthropologists use today to teach the New England vampire panic. Edwin Brown died on May 25, 1892. He was 11. He had been sick for most of his life. He had drunk the ashes of his sister on March 17th, hoping the cure would work. It did not. Edwin's death ended the case. Exeter moved on. George Brown was left alone on the farm. He had buried his wife in 1883, his daughter in January, his son in May. 3 family members, all dead of the same disease in less than a decade. He lived on for many years. He never remarried. He never spoke publicly about what had happened. No state or federal investigation followed. The only investigation was Metcalf's, filed with the Exeter Board of Health on April 4, 1892. Metcalf signed the report and never wrote publicly about the case again. Modern researchers picked it up later. The New England Historical Genealogical Society has maintained a file on the Brown family since the 1890s. Folklorists, medical anthropologists, and historians of New England have studied the case throughout the 20th century. The popular press has revisited it again and again, across newspapers, magazines, and books. Mercy Brown's case is the most famous vampire case in American history. It is older than Bram Stoker's novel, which was published in 1897, 5 years after the exhumation. In a sense, the case of Mercy Brown gave the American reading public the language of vampirism even before the novel arrived. The question, in the modern sense, is what Mercy Brown actually was. The answer depends on who you ask. A medical anthropologist would say she was a 19-year-old woman who died of pulmonary tuberculosis. The disease damaged her lungs. The disease backed up blood into her heart. The disease preserved her body in the frozen ground. A physician removed the heart. the ashes were given to her brother as a folk cure. The cure failed. The brother died of the same disease. The case is a textbook example of a folk explanation for a real disease. A folklorist would say she became a vampire in the New England folk sense. That vampire had no fangs, no Transylvanian castle, no neck biting. The New England vampire was a family member, dead, who fed on the living through some inherited or contagious curse. The cure was to remove the first victim's heart. The cure was a New England cure. The cure did not work. A believer would offer a third answer. To the believer, the body's preservation is not coincidence. The heart, in that telling, was full of blood for a reason. Edwin's death after the cure, the believer insists, was not a failure of the cure, but something else entirely. The case, the believer says, is not closed. The folk explanation is the real one. The case of Mercy Brown has been asked, in one form or another, for more than 130 years. What was the vampire? A person? A disease? A folk belief? The question has been asked and re-asked across newspapers, textbooks, documentaries, and books. Subscribe for a new story every night at 8 p.m. Never miss a case. The Brown Family, Chestnut Hill, Rhode Island, 1883 to 1892. Mary, Mercy, Edwin. 3 members of the same family, all dead of consumption in less than a decade. The father alone on the farm. The case survives across the Rhode Island Historical Society, the Providence Journal archives, the parish registers of Chestnut Hill, Metcalfe's report to the Board of Health, and the published work of medical anthropologists, folklorists, and historians. The Mercy Brown case is the most thoroughly documented vampire case in American history, and more than 130 years have passed since the exhumation. The case gave the American reading public the language of vampirism even before the novels did. The case is the textbook example across medical anthropology of a folk explanation for an infectious disease. The case is the textbook example across folklore of a New England vampire. So tonight, the question is the same one that has been asked for more than 130 years. What was Mercy Brown? Was the vampire a person? A disease? A folk belief that turned out to be true? Should we believe the doctor who saw the body and wrote the report, or the folk belief which has survived for more than a century? The Chestnut Hill Cemetery is still there. The Brown family plot is still there. The case is still there. The case is open. The archives are open. The answer is not.